All right. So the writer is using the term a love affair, and he's asking us why he's using this term. We have to figure that out. It's a lexical question. Now, the very first sentence that a lot of people are going to see who are not aware of using lexical resources as ironies, they are going to think that answer A option could be right. But actually, it is not correct. The reason why it should not be correct is because in the paragraph, we are discussing codeine. We are discussing the risk that comes from it. We are discussing how in Australia people have been using it a lot. We have even made the comparison with the US to show that even though we have far less population than the US, still we in people in Australia have used it quite a lot, right? But they have nowhere really described the relationship, the romantic relationship involving codeine with people or somebody else. So that is why it should not be used here. And this is not going to be the right answer. Now, let's understand the second answer option. According to the second answer option, it means that the writer is trying to highlight the long-standing use of codeine. Long-standing, that means it has been used for a very long time. That is why the term that is being used here is called long-standing. Long-standing use of something, it has been used for a very long time. Use of codeine in some countries. But here they have only talked about the US and the Australia, not the Australia. They've only talked about US and Australia. So yes, I do have some countries, but what I'm not happy with is that in the US, they have not told me that this particular medication has been used for this long, for this many years. So they are definitely not trying to highlight this part because this information is not even available in the answer options, in the paragraph, which is why this is not going to be the right answer. Then we come to answer option C, which says that it indicates codeine's popularity. That means codeine is quite popular among Australians. Now, I might agree with this a little bit more than the other options. That's because if I look here, I see that it has been and by our, we mean Australia. It has been Australia's most used opioid. So they have used this opioid, this particular medication, far more than any other pain relieving medication. And it showed again and again, they're emphasizing on this point that they took this more as a country. They took this particular medication more than they made the comparison with the US to show that how much more they took it. Then they're going in a different direction and they're talking about how they have only used, it is only available with the prescription and whatnot, right? But still, they have mentioned that they have taken it far more than any other medication. They have taken it far more than the US, which is a far bigger country than Australia. So this particular sentence should not be incorrect according to this part, a love affair. Because when you say a love affair, it means that you like doing it, but it might not be the right thing for you, which is why you're calling it an affair as well. So I think I would like to go with answer option C if I don't find any other better options, but I am going to see other answer options here. Now, according to answer option D, it says that it explains the risks of codeine use in Australia. There is definitely one statement that mentioned the risks of codeine, not multiple risks, but there is a risk of harm from codeine by overdosing. Yes, but when they described the statement, they said about codeine in a very general manner. They were not trying to say that this risk exists only in Australia. First of all, this is a singular risk. So they have not talked about risks. Secondly, they have not specifically talked about the risks which are there in Australia, which they have specified in answer option D. And my answer option has to be 100% accurate according to the information that is provided in the paragraph, which it is not. And this is why I am going to go with answer option C as my right answer. The writer is using the term love affair to show how Australians, how much Australians have been taking this medication. They like taking it, which is why they have been continuing it. So the correct answer option is going to be C. All right. Now, in this question, we see that the writer wants to ask us that the decision to make codeine prescription only use in Australia was a result of this, was a lengthy process, was to reduce something, was directly influenced by some country's policy. So basically, they want us to comment on the decision that was made to make codeine in Australia prescription only. And I know that that decision had taken place in the very, very end here, restrict codeine to prescription only. Now, this left the TGA with little choice. So, something before this happened, which left the TGA. What is TGA? Therapeutic Goods Administration. It left the TGA with very little choice but to bring Australia in line with other countries according to which codeine should be only prescription based. So if I go with answer option D, right in the sentence, you see that this decision was directly influenced by some other country's policy. But the only time where I am seeing the word other countries in this entire paragraph is in the sentence in line with most other countries. So if I choose this D as an answer option, I'm saying that this decision to make codeine prescription only in Australia was directly influenced by some other country's policy. That means because I saw other countries using codeine on prescription basis only, that is why I took this decision. But this is not correct. This was a result of some other reasons which have been explained in this entire paragraph right before this sentence, which is why I cannot choose answer option D to be the right answer because it was not directly influenced by these other countries' policy, but rather it was following suit because of their own reasons. What those reasons are, that we are going to look at in the paragraph. But I also want to clarify why we should not choose answer option C. Because according to answer option C, it says that the decision was taken to reduce the availability of codeine products. Now, this could be one of the reasons, but this can't be the only reason here. If you look at answer option C, again and again, it is only talking about the availability of codeine products. Here, I want you to focus on the attempts that they had made previously as well. In 2008, when they tried to reduce the harm of codeine, at that time there was no mention of codeine being sold over the counter or codeine being made prescription only as a product. They're not really discussing that as a reason. In 2010, again, one more time, they tried to reduce the harm of codeine. They moved behind the counter at pharmacy. Yes, but it was still available there. But if you go with 2016, now here we see that all their previous attempts were not really helpful, and the deaths continue to rise from codeine, which is why in the end the study reported that even behind the counter, this was the most misused illegal opioid that was available, and it was particularly common in adolescents. So that is why they have, because of all of these reasons, one, two, three, four reasons combined, they decided to bring it in line with other countries and follow the policy of restricting codeine to prescription only. However, according to this answer option C, this decision was only done to reduce the availability of codeine products. But the codeine product was available. If you went to a doctor and got it, it was still available. Just because I'm making it prescription only does not mean that it is not going to become available. So I'm not completely happy with the answer option C, and which is why I don't think it should be the right answer. But if I don't find a better answer, I'll just go ahead with it. Now, in answer option A, I see that they're saying that this decision was a result of sudden government. Now, this little term I wanted to focus here a little bit more. It was a sudden government reaction to misuse in adolescence. Now, we did read the part about government reaction. Yes, this was the government's response, but they have been responding to it since 2008, 2010 also they did it, 2016 also they did it, right? But, and I also agree with the part about misuse in adolescence, but that misuse in adolescence came here. It was pretty common. They found out about it in 2016. Yes, the misuse was going on since 2008, but they found out about it in 2016 survey. So when they tried to change it or tried to respond to it in 2008 and in 2010 again, it was not solely due to this reason. Also, one more time, if you look at this phrase, which clearly tells us that it was not an overnight decision. This is to emphasize that, listen, we did not just think about this last night and decided to make changes today. It is something that we have been thinking about for over a decade. So, more than 10 years, we have been thinking about it. It is not a sudden change. We have thought about it a lot. We have given it a lot of thought and time and consideration. So, it is going against what we are seeing in answer option A, and it is why answer option A should not be correct. Now, in answer option B, I agree with the part where they say that it was a lengthy process. Yes, because these time references and these time references again and again are emphasizing that they have been trying to do something about it for a very long time. So, yes, it was a lengthy process. And also in the last sentence, also you get that it was done after very lengthy consultation. So, anytime where you see any reference to time in this paragraph, you would see that they're trying to tell you it's not a short process. It's a very lengthy thing. We are taking a lot of time about it. So, they are emphasizing on it. And then it says involving multiple attempts to decrease its harm. Multiple attempts, yes, once in 2008, then again in 2010, but unfortunately they did not succeed one more time, and then again in 2006, 16 they did it. So yes, multiple attempts to decrease its harm. Yes, they have been trying to decrease its harm. Attempt at reducing harm. Here they were moved behind the counter in 2018, and in 2010 again they were moved behind the counter to increasing misuse. That was their response, and then once again they did it because they saw that deaths continued to increase. So misuse, death, be it in adolescence, be it anybody, be it for whatever reason, they're trying to decrease the harm that comes from codeine by making it prescription only, which is why I think B answer option is a better choice than C answer option. Because C answer option suggests that we did not want to make it available. If they did not want to make it available, then why would they try to do what they did in 2008 and 2010? They could have directly just made it prescription only in 2008. And even then, it is still available there. So this is why B answer option is going to be the right answer option here. Now, before we move on to the third question, I wanted to look at these three vocabulary terms. The reason why I wanted to look at these terms from the previous paragraphs is because these are what you call collocations. Now, collocations are a combination of words that often come together to make something which sounds very natural to the native speakers. What do I mean by the term natural speakers here? I mean, for example, here, the term native speakers would refer to people who often use English language. And these are going to be English language speakers in UK, in America, etc. But in India, because we do not oftenly use English as a first language, we may not be aware of these terms which are used together because they have a set meaning. But because they are very familiar to native speakers, somebody who's writing this article or other medical articles, they are going to use collocations a lot because those will sound very natural to them. And also, those will be used to prove the point that they're trying to prove or to make sure that their perspective is understood because of the use of these collocations, which is why you should be more and more familiar with English language collocations which are familiar to the native speakers with the help of the text that you are doing for your Part C or Part B, for example. Now, here, an overnight decision was a term that was being used in the second paragraph, I think. And here, overnight decision is saying something that a decision was made very quickly or very suddenly without much time to think about it. So when I say overnight success, that means that person became successful overnight. That means very quickly, very suddenly, that person became successful. He did not have to work hard a lot because he was an overnight success. We often hear this term when we talk about actors in Bollywood, somebody who has been working in the film industry for 10 or 20 years are not as famous. They do not have as much salary, as much brand value as compared to somebody whose one movie became famous and that was their first movie. So they became an overnight success. The second term that we have here is on someone's radar. Now, this term was used here in this sentence when we were saying that codeine has been on the government's radar for over a decade. So that means the government was noticing whatever was happening with codeine for over a decade. That means for more than 10 years. So it essentially means that something or someone is being noticed. Here, in our example, it was codeine. But here, it could be anything. It could be a person. It could be a thing also that is being noticed or considered by someone for some time now. And usually, when we say that he is on her radar, that means she is probably going to make a decision or she's probably going to do something about that person very, very quickly. So, on someone's radar is another collocation. The third collocation we have here is called in line with something. Just when you look at the term in line, that means imagine you're standing in a school assembly and teacher says, go back in line. That means go follow the line or go stand in the line. Do not stand out of it, right? Do not stand out from the line as well. Do not stand out from the crowd. So, in line with something is me saying when something or someone is similar to something else or agrees with another thing. It means that we are trying to follow or match the expected plan or idea. This term was used here in this sentence when we were saying that TGA had little choice but to bring Australia in line with most other countries that restrict codeine. So that means other countries restrict codeine, and we were trying to bring Australia also in line with those countries. We were also trying to kind of make Australia follow the same idea of making codeine prescription only. So that is the idea that has been used here. Remember, these have been used in these paragraphs, but does not mean these collocations will not be used in other medical articles. So make sure that you're aware of these meanings. Now, according to the third paragraph, how did GPs feel about the announcement? So I want to look at adjectives, I want to look at language, which is being used when we are describing GPs' response to this particular announcement. Now, according to all the answer options, I wanted to notice one thing in common. The one thing that is there in common is we are using they, they. Here, I'm using them. When I'm using they, them, their, their, not there, which is used here. But what I'm trying to say is GPs feared the change. GPs supported the change. GPs were in favor of other painkillers. There was a lot of burden on GPs for prescribing higher dosages. So you should have a good understanding of pronouns in order to get this right. Now, if I say that GPs feared the change or GPs felt something negative, they feared the change, they supported the change, they were in fear of the change, right? But in the paragraph, what I'm saying is that there were fears. There was also concern. Some people were concerned. If you look at these terms, and if you go ahead and read the entire sentence, you would find out that there were concerns about GPs, for GPs, for patients. Some people were concerned about GPs, some people were concerned about other things, but nowhere in these sentences do I get a confirmation that these were, in fact, the feelings of the general practitioners, that these were the concerns of the general practitioners. But in all of my sentences for answer options, I'm saying they feared the change. GPs feared the change. GPs supported the change. GPs were in favor of these things. So, based on this only, I can say that from here onwards, if somebody is finding the right answer, then they have not got the right answer, and it is probably the wrong answer that they have gotten. What you should understand from here, though, is that when the announcement happened, it divided the community, right? That's what you should see. It divided the community and healthcare professional groups. So healthcare groups were different. How did it divide the community? Well, pharmacy organizations opposed the change. They were not in favor of the change. They hated the change. But my question is not about the pharmacy. My question is about the GPs. Whenever I'm using whereas, I'm trying to show a contrast. I'm trying to show a comparison. So GPs, if they were opposing the idea, here GPs were in favor. They were in favor of the idea. So some people might think, ma'am, I read this line, but afterwards I read these other sentences. They also used the term GP, but I was not sure about the meaning. And as a result, I used different answer options. So GPs were in favor. GPs supported the change. Yes, that's correct. They supported the change. There were also fears, but this is not GPs' fear. GPs are not fearing this. There were generally there were concerns or fears that the change would lead to a massive burden on GPs, a lot of burden on GPs because the patients would come to request codeine, but it was not their concern. So people's request for strong painkillers, they feared the change. They did not fear the change. They were in favor of the change. So because of this, answer option A is definitely going to be wrong. There was a lot of burden on GPs for prescribing higher dosages. So some people would think, ma'am, I mashed the massive burden part with this, a lot of burden part. But again, this was not concerned by GPs, it was a concern for them. So then again, this is not going to be the right answer. Similarly, yes, they were in favor. So if somebody is matching words, they are going to think they were in favor. They were in favor. Here also, we are using the term favor. So based on that, I can select this answer option. No, never select answer option by matching words. Make sure the meaning is 100% same and it is answering the question that has been asked. So GPs were in favor of other painkillers? No. The only sentence that I do get to see where GPs are describing their feelings is this one. GPs were in favor of this. There was other concern. There were other concerns. Oh, and this was because people wanting codeine would need to see their doctor, so they might request the stronger products. That has always been prescription only. There was also concern the change would push people towards even strong painkillers and whatnot. But there was also concern. This was not a concern by the GPs. And by the way, that was a concern by somebody else. I don't know who, but that was a general concern. GPs were never, nobody is actually promoting other painkillers here. Nobody. But the question is specifically about GPs. And based on that alone, I know that answer option C should be right because there's only one sentence which is actually discussing this particular opinion. Once again, let's look at the collocations that have been used in the previous paragraph. Unintended consequences, like I explained to you early on, these were results or outcomes or effects of something, of an action that were not planned or expected, that were not predicted before, they were unpredictable, they happened by accident and are not part of the original plan. This is only because I'm using the term unintended here. If I use the term intended, the opposite of it, that means the results or the effects of an action that happened, they were part of the plan, they were planned, they were expected. So you are going to see these two terms used a lot in your reading paragraphs. Unintended consequences, unintended outcomes, intended consequences. This word happens or comes a lot in the other vocabulary videos that I've been making. Now let's come to the burden part. The burden can be light, it can be heavy, it can be also massive, in other words also. So when I want to talk about massive, massive says that it is very large, very heavy, right? Burden can refer to responsibility. So very heavy responsibility or problem that is very difficult to handle as well. But if I said it was a light burden, then I would mean that it is not that difficult to handle. But the term massive can also be used with some other things, massive output, massive control, massive gain, massive misuse. It would mean a high level of misuse, very large level of misuse. So these can be used again and again. Make sure you note these down and revise these from time to time. Now, I believe that this question should be very easy to answer for everyone reading this paragraph. The reason for that is given in the paragraph itself. It's because each and everything that you read in the paragraph is pointing to only one thing, that there was a drop in codeine poisonings overall. So that means what they had intended to do is to reduce the misuse of codeine. That means they wanted to decrease, and decrease is another term for drop in codeine poisonings overall, right? Then again, we are saying that the category which was no longer available without prescription, that in that category as well, poisonings dropped by some other number. Dropped. There was no increase in poisonings with high standard codeine. And we also see that drop again one more time, the codeine usage, overall usage of codeine. Then again, we are seeing that it is dropping by this. Once again, we are seeing that there was no increase in the use of higher strength codeine. So all of these terms combined are clearly just telling me one thing, that listen, we wanted something to happen. The reason why we wanted to stop codeine uh, over you. The reason why we wanted to do something was because there were a lot of deaths which were happening because of the misuse of codeine, because of its addictive nature. And when we made it prescription only, all of that either stopped, or the deaths that were happening, the deaths that were increasing every year, they started decreasing. So what they wanted to do was actually happening because of this one decision. So when the question asks me, what point does the writer make in the fourth paragraph? I know that I cannot choose answer option A, because answer option A is saying that there were unintended consequences. Unintended means something that I did not intend for it to happen, something that was not intentional. But this is exactly something that I wanted to happen. So it was not unintended consequences. It was not something that I did not want to happen as a result, or I did not expect it to happen. So because of this, answer option A is going to be incorrect. Now, when I come to the second answer option, B, it says that there was significant reduction, significant, a lot of reduction, because 79%, 87%, 50% is significant, a lot of reduction in codeine related incidents. Yes, incidents cover everything: poisonings, misuse, death, everything. So I agree with answer option B, but I am going to see other answer options to check if there is any other indication of right answer there also. Now, when I look at answer option C, I see that it says the changes were not welcomed by users. But the paragraph does not talk anywhere about consumers in a way, whether they were happy, sad, they opposed the change, they were in favor of the change. We do not get any information like this. And because of that, we are not going to choose answer option C. For answer option D, we see that the demand for over-the-counter painkillers decreased. If I say that the demand for over-the-counter painkillers, there are two things which are wrong with this. I wanted to focus on these two terms. When I say painkillers, I'm not talking about only codeine specifically, but all of these statements, all of these statistics actually talk about codeine usage only. I have no way of understanding from this paragraph whether or not the demand for other OTC painkillers decreased or increased. So, because of this term painkillers, which refers to more than one painkiller, not specific to codeine, I know that my answer option D cannot be correct. The second thing, by the way, I wanted you to notice here is that demand for over-the-counter prescription. We do not know about other over-the-counter prescriptions, and we do not know. We can't say that demand for over-the-counter no longer available without prescription. They have not said anything about demand, people wanting more of that medication, nothing like that. So the only answer option choice that is correct is going to be B answer option, which says that there was significant reduction in codeine related incidents. Now, this kind of question is going to be very, very common in your listening part C as well. You're often going to hear, why does the so and so person discusses the case of this, discusses the case of Lucy. I think I can remember one of the questions from OET listening. But this kind of question is also very common in your reading part C. In order to answer this question, you need to understand one idea that we use in writing a lot. That idea simply says that when I want to prove my point, or when I want to prove someone else's point, when I want to disprove someone else's theory, ideas, their opinion, whatever it is, when I want to show agreement with that idea, disagreement with that idea, my theory, whatever it is, when I want to prove something, I am going to use examples. Examples can talk about particular cases of patients. Examples can also be statistics, just like we saw in the previous paragraph so far. We have seen statistics being used over and over to prove a particular point. I did not discuss those in detail in the previous questions because those were not the kind of questions we were getting there. But here, this understanding is very important. Why? Because here, a lot of students are going to see the answer option C and B, and they are going to think that, okay, I see that the example here is discussing a newborn baby. The example here is discussing breast milk as well, right? The example here is also discussing childbirth. So that means I should be choosing answer option B or C because they also discuss newborns, they also discuss breast milk. Please understand that when writers give examples to you, they want you to understand a broader perspective, broader point of view, not a specific point of view which has been provided in the example. It basically means that in order to make you understand about unintended consequences, or in order to make you understand about overnight decision, I used the example of overnight success, which is related to Bollywood industry. But I only used it as an example. There are thousands of different examples which are out there, which would be not about Bollywood. They could be about science, they could be about medicine, they could be about home remedies, they could be about any number of things. Those are only examples to help you understand a theory, a definition, an idea. But as soon as you start making the example the only point that somebody is trying to help you explain or understand, you lose marks. So, in fact, any answer options that are going to be very, very specific about this example, those are automatically going to be incorrect. Yes, there are some instances where, and I would say very rarely, when we use the exact right example that we have been trying to prove. In that case, yes, it's a good idea to go ahead with the example. But most of these cases are going to use different examples. Now let's understand from here. In order to understand the answer options A, B, C, D, why they are wrong, you need to, second of all, read the paragraph from the beginning to get a general idea. Here they are saying concerns over, so they're discussing the concerns over the misuse and addiction were not the sole reason. When you look at this term, not the sole reason, this is very important because they are saying that misuse and addiction was one of the reasons or two of the reasons why the availability of codeine was changed to prescription only. Yes, definitely great. But these were not the sole reasons. So now they're going to discuss the other reasons. Here, they are saying a person's response to codeine is determined by their genes. So it is about genes that they're going to talk about in this entire paragraph. You see the word DNA being used, the enzyme they are using. So basically, this gene or this enzyme, which is available in some people's genes, activates the codeine by converting it into morphine. So they convert the codeine into morphine in a person's body. So depending on the kind of gene you have, some people do not get any effect. If I don't have this enzyme, this gene, then if I am taking codeine, I'm not going to have any effect of the codeine. Not good, not bad, zero effect, nada. But if I get a normal effect, that also is dependent on my gene. But some find it toxic. Look at this language. While others, we also use while for comparison, while others find it toxic at what is normally considered a safe dose. So even if your doctor has given you the safe dosage of codeine, that safe dosage could go into your body and become toxic by converting that codeine into morphine because of the gene you have. So it is not talking about misuse. It is not discussing any dangerous effect of codeine of a normal dose, specifically in breast milk. No, it is talking about how people generally, if even if I'm not a mother, I'm a simple person. I'm 30, 20, 25, 40, 50, 60, 80. If I'm using codeine, I have that gene, then I can find its toxic effects in my body. And that toxic effect could be what exactly? It could be resulting in deaths also. The latter, this one, the last one is the most dangerous. It is the most dangerous scenario. It could result in death. In fact, it has resulted in several deaths. And this has included a newborn baby. Now they're giving the example of a newborn baby who died after their mother had a normal dose of codeine. Normal dose, not a lethal dose of codeine after childbirth. The mother was later found to have the gene that results in excessive codeine activation. So the excessive codeine activation happened and a lethal dose of morphine was transmitted to her baby. So somebody did not take morphine and transfer it to the baby. No, codeine was given, safe dose, normal dose. But because of that gene availability, what happened? That gene activated that normal dose into a lethal dose of morphine in the baby. And because of that activation in the breast milk, it was dangerous to the baby and the baby died. So we are not discussing the misuse problem here because they are going beyond the misuse, beyond the addiction problem, not the sole reasons, right? So they're not trying to prove that point. So this part that talks about show the dangerous effects of a normal dose of codeine in breast milk, it is because of the breast milk part that I have a problem with this answer option. This is not why the writer is using this example. Similarly, fetal dangerous consequences of codeine, results of codeine in newborns. It is not specifically about newborns, it is about any person in general. Now, they are not trying to say that make it prescription only. Prescription only basically says that this is going to be prescribed to you. That is the only way for you to receive this medication from somewhere. But the doctor is going to prescribe that medication, the same medication that was prescribed to this person as well, at a safe dose. But the still, despite codeine being prescription only in this case, the baby still died. Why? Because they're trying to make the point that if you use this and if you have that gene, that genetic variability, why are we calling it a variability? Because it varies from person to person. Not every person has this. Not every person is going to react in the same manners. So it depends on your gene. So it is variable. It is dependent on your gene. The variable is your gene here, right? So the potential dangers of codeine, the dangers that could happen to you, there's a very good chance that it could happen to you. So potential dangers. It is not advocating for the need for making the codeine prescription only. That's how you know that this is going to be my right answer, option A, not B, not C, not D. It's very important that you understand how to answer a question about examples, about somebody's quotes, somebody's statistics that they are using, because all of those questions are going to use the same method of fooling you into choosing a wrong answer. And all of those answer options, all of those questions are going to get to the right answer with the same method only. For the same reason that we choose the correct answer in the previous question, we're going to find it very easy to choose the right answer in this question as well, because it is a pronoun reference question. There are two things that you should understand about pronoun reference. The first one is that when you use a pronoun, you are using it in place of a noun. So for that noun has to be mentioned before the pronoun, somewhere in the previous sentence or in the second last sentence or in that previous sentence. If my name is Monica, so somebody, when they first introduce me, they are going to say, Monica is my teacher. Then in the next sentence, they're not going to keep using my name. They're going to start using a pronoun instead of using my noun, my name. They will say, Monica is my teacher. She has been teaching me for 2 months. So far, I have learned about this and this from her, right? So I'm using she, I'm using her, but I'm not using Monica again and again. Why? Because I've started using a pronoun, a proxy for the noun in place of noun, right? So a lot of students misunderstand that if they are seeing a term here, then they are seeing a term here in the next sentence or in the same sentence, for example, then that is going to become the right answer to their pronoun question. Now, let me tell you, if you have used a pronoun here, you're not going to find its answer in the next sentence. That's not going to happen ever. But what is possible that you are using a pronoun here and you find its answer in the same sentence, because I can refer to the same thing in the same sentence twice also. However, what you should understand is that this is not something that commonly happens in your questions. So it's a very rare occurrence that you're going to get that kind of question. So what you should be looking at the very last sentence that you have. And in there, you should be looking at nouns or noun phrases that could be indicated by the pronoun you have in question. Now here, this refers to, according to answer option A, the deaths resulting from codeine. Now, the deaths resulting from codeine seems like a good idea for me, because I know the latter is the most dangerous scenario, has resulted in several deaths. And this could be example of a newborn baby, or one of the deaths that resulted from this scenario, right? It makes sense to me. This part here, up until here, it makes sense to me. But when I read the next part, misuse in new mothers, once again, it has become specific about new mothers, which was not an example that they were trying to give. They were only trying to make us understand the broader perspective. So it was an example of a dangerous scenario. It was an example of one of the several deaths that occurred due to this dangerous scenario, but it was not specifically talking about new mothers. And it was definitely not talking about the misuse, because it was provided at a safer dose. So it was not something that they were misusing or overdosing. They were provided a safer dose by their GP only. Now here, based on this answer option is going to be wrong. Similarly, because I've just talked about the safe dose, I know that answer option C is going to be incorrect as well, because they are also saying that the case of a lethal dose of codeine. No, it was given at a safe dose. The lethal dose of morphine became because of the gene that was present there, found to have the gene that resulted in excessive codeine here, that resulted in this, right? But here, once again, I am not going to refer to something here or here. I'm going to refer to something in the previous paragraph. So I know C answer option is also incorrect. The increase in codeine poisonings. Poisonings are being discussed here in the paragraph, in the very first sentence, in the last sentence, maybe. But once again, poisoning is not something that is being discussed in the previous sentence that I see here. And because of that reason alone, I know that this answer option is incorrect. And they're definitely not talking about the increase that is happening here as well. So my correct answer option is going to be the deaths caused by codeine mixed with a specific enzyme. The deaths caused by this has resulted or has included the death, or the number of deaths has also included a newborn. This is the second test that you can always check. If you're using a pronoun and you have found the noun that it is referring back to. For example, anywhere that the student was saying, she is my teacher, she has been teaching me, blah, 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 right? If the pronoun is, if the noun is actually Monica, then you can use that noun in those sentences and it should make grammatically perfect sense for you. Contextually as well, it should make sense. Monica is my teacher, Monica has been teaching me for this long, Monica has been doing this and that. It makes perfect sense. Similarly, the deaths which are caused by codeine mixed with a specific enzyme have also included a newborn baby. Yes, the deaths have also included the example of a newborn baby where this happened. So it makes perfect sense. And that is why this is going to be the right answer. One more time, let's look at the collocations that we had from the previous paragraphs. We had the term lethal dose. Lethal is something which is very, very strong. And we call something lethal when it has the ability to cause death. Now, it could be a dose. It could be other things as well. Lethal dose, lethal reaction, and number of things can be connected with this word. But this is one collocation that we saw from the previous paragraph. The second term that we saw was variable effect. There are different kinds of effects which are out there. But a variable effect comes from the word vary. It's because vary means change. So variable is its noun form, which means that the impact of something or the result of something changes depending on different factors. This is something which is related to variable. So if I'm saying a variable factor, so that is a factor which keeps on changing. If I say variable effect, so that is an effect which keeps on changing depending on some other things, by influenced by some other things. If I say variable treatment, it means that it is a treatment that keeps on changing depending on the symptoms of the patient or depending on the health of the patient. Similarly, variable trajectory, variable symptoms, variable problems, variable causes. You can make n number of collocations using these terms. So definitely knowing the meaning of the words individually and their common collocations as well are going to help you understand your reading articles far more better. This is a very short paragraph, and it should be easy for us to answer this question. Now, when we ask the question, the writer makes the point. I mean to say, what is the writer trying to do in this paragraph overall, in a broader sense? That means I'm looking for the gist of this paragraph. Because the sentences are very less, I can afford to read this right now and then tell you what is the overall gist. The very first sentence only tells me that there needs to be further research, further needs, which needs to look into possible unintended consequences of the change in codeine availability. So when we talk about codeine availability, so far we know that they are using codeine availability when they want to discuss codeine being prescription based only. It was provided over the counter as well early on, but after the announcement in 2018, it has been made prescription based only in Australia. And we discussed the meaning of the term unintended consequences. So there needs to be further research which looks into the possible unexpected consequences, unexpected outcomes, results of this announcement, which happened due to codeine. So, in that announcement, based on that, for instance, it's just an example, it's not everything that we are trying to say here. For example, people might have switched to simple analgesics after making codeine prescription based. They may have switched to simple painkillers like ibuprofen or paracetamol. These don't have the same potential to be abused. So that means they don't have the same harmful effects. That means you cannot overuse them. They are generally safer, comparatively safer. They're more effective than the low strength protein products which were sold early on. Still, yet they can still be toxic when overdosed. They can still become lethal. They can still become toxic if you are overdosing on them. Our research did not look at whether the codeine switch led to more people using paracetamol or ibuprofen, or were they harmed by them. Our research did not look at that. So the writer is in this entire paragraph is trying to show you that there can be various unintended outcomes, consequences of this particular change. One of these changes is this: people may have started using these other painkillers, but we need to look into this more. So, further research is needed on the efficacy of some alternative painkillers. Efficacy means the how effective a particular thing is. So they're not trying to say that you need to look into other painkillers in any way. They are instead saying what are the effects of codeine making prescription based only, codeine not being available to a lot of people over the counter, that what are those effects that you did not expect. So none of this. More research should be done on the harmful effects. Again, it's not doing that. Codeine alternatives work better and are preferred by, that is only an example. That is only an example for the point that they're trying to make, that you need to do more research on the unintended consequences. Once again, when you see an example and you see it being specifically used here, not the right answer. It is important to investigate. Investigate is another word for saying there needs to be further research. It is important to investigate the impact, the effect, the consequences of moving away from codeine. So earlier it was used a lot, now it is not used as much. So in a sense, I can say of moving away from codeine. So some people might not agree with the language in this, but I know for a fact the other answer options are 100% wrong. So this is going to be my best answer option, and this is going to be the correct one as well. Now, for this question, the writer asks us, or we are being asked, that what does the writer identify as a main factor? This is a main factor. It's not some secondary factor. It is something that is there in most of the cases. What is the main factor contributing to drug-related issues? So, whatever drug-related issues they're discussing here. Now, according to answer option B and D, they both discuss this addictive nature of some drugs, this, the inability to stop taking addictive drugs. Now, these are two answer options which would be chosen by students who are not reading the paragraph, but rather using their own knowledge of these drugs. Because in this paragraph, they have not talked about the addictive nature of drugs in any way, in any reference. They have also discussed some drugs. For example, they have discussed painkillers like these here, but they have not talked about the addictive nature. So, inability to stop taking or the addictive nature, this is not going to be the right answer. This is also going to be the wrong answer. Now, when we come to answer option A, the unavailability of prescription drugs. So, they have done two things here. Number one, they have made it quite specific when I say unavailability of prescription drugs. And here, then they are discussing unavailability. What I wanted to understand is that even though it may seem like the right answer because you see the word availability being used here or somewhere else in the paragraph as well, whenever you think you've got the right answer, always look at the question and see whether it actually answers the question or not. The writer again is asking me, what is the main factor? What is the main thing which causes drug related issues, problems? So they tell me that prescription drug misuse and overdoses, these are the problems. These are not causes. But when you misuse prescription drug, when you overdose on prescription drugs, these are the problems that are arising. So when you are doing these, or how these effects when they are happening, they are very much driven by drug availability, by how easily I can access the drug. Availability actually means accessing something, having access to something. And they are saying, and when the availability of other medicines in Australia and international has been restricted, because when you're restricting the medication, when you are making the access to drugs restricted, making it difficult for me to access the drug by making it restricted, then you have seen the benefits. And the benefits include what exactly? The benefits include reductions in misuse and poisoning. So the actual issues that we had were prescription drug misuse and overdoses. Overdoses lead to poisoning, by the way. So those become the benefits, reduction in misuse and poisoning, when you restrict the drug. So when it is available, we have issues. When it is restricted, we have benefits. So when the drug is unavailable, it's not a main factor related to drug issues. No. When the drug is unavailable, that's when I see benefits, not problems. But when the drug is easily available. Availability means easy access. That's when I have problems. That's why your answer option C is going to be the right answer. Now, before we end this video, there is one other slide I wanted to look at in terms of your vocabulary. One more time here, when we see the term driven by something, someone, that could be a factor, that could be a person, that could be personal motivation, anything. Driven by. That means an action decision is strongly influenced or motivated by a particular reason or factor. This term is being used in your reading paragraphs quite a lot to talk about causes, to talk about patients' motivation to do something. And these kinds of topics are going to make use of this collocation a lot. One small piece of the puzzle, even though we did not discuss it, but it was given here. Codeine is just one small piece of the puzzle. That means that it is only a small piece. It is only a small part of a larger situation or problem or a larger problem puzzle. It's only a small part of it. It means that there are many other parts to consider. When somebody is using this, they are trying to see there are many other parts to consider, and this is just one of them. And this actually is a very good idea. I could use this statement, I could use this collocation in the paragraph, and I could, in one of the answer options, give you this meaning that there are many parts to consider. This is how the usage of collocation can actually help you in detecting the right answer or eliminating the wrong answer. So I hope you found this video helpful in understanding how to answer your questions. Remember, we have talked about answering strategies today, making sure that we are not choosing the wrong answer, but a lot of it has to do with your vocabulary understanding, your collocation understanding. I did not read the paragraphs in front of you for most of the questions because that might take a little bit more time and make this video more lengthier than we need it to be. But the actual secret lies in how you're reading the paragraph, how you're understanding the paragraph. Because if you misunderstand what you have read, then there is no way you're going to go to the right answer using whatever strategy you would like to. So make sure you read the paragraph correctly and you do not keep rereading the paragraph for whatever reason. Make sure you become an active reader, not a passive reader. You can, in order to improve your vocabulary and collocations understanding, you should definitely watch our other videos. I'm going to link them here somewhere for reading vocabulary. They're going to help you improve the vocabulary understanding that is being used in most of your reading paragraphs. That's it. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you find this helpful.